Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the very first inaugural edition of the STRATMOR Advisory Angle. And this is powered by the Chrisman Commentary, which we're very thankful for. And a rotating cast of Stratmorians is going to be here every single first Tuesday of the month. And today I am joined by two amazing colleagues. One of them, if you're looking at the screen, says Maria Junk, but I think most of us know you by a different name, sir. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, that is wacky. I have no idea how that happened. Obviously, I clicked the wrong link in the team invite. I'm not Maria Junk.
No.
No, not at all. My name is Garth Graham, and I have no earthly idea why it says Maria. It's all hilarious.
Good. You're always keeping it real. Always keeping it real. But we're also joined by our amazing Stratmor colleague, Mike Seminari. Mike.
Hello. Happy to be here. I too was Maria Junk when I joined the call, Garth. So I think you just have to change it. But,
and Maria says
great to,
she says in the chat she's never looked better. So there you go. And for the folks who are listening live, we definitely want to encourage you to make liberal use of the chat. If you've ever been on a workshop or anything with Stratmor, you know that we love to really engage with folks that are dialed in with us. So feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'll be watching the chat as we go throughout. But we do have the one and only Garth Graham and the amazing Mike Seminari today. And we're going to be together for about 40 minutes, and we're digging into a pretty interesting topic today. And this is based on an article, actually two different articles that Stratmor published recently, talking about refis and why the next refi wave is going to be a little bit different. And we're going to be jumping in with each other. Hopefully you're going to be jumping in with us. But I want to first turn it over to Garth to kick us off and talk a little bit about why this is going to be a little bit different this time around, Garth.
Okay, so before I start using my South Florida metaphor, I think we should, in the sense of full disclosure, we should talk about where we are right now. And I'll go first. I have headed north, and I'm in the DC area. I do a lot of work up here with clients in the DC area. So I am in my in-laws' dining room, which I've blurred so that I don't get that unbelievable hip 1970s wallpaper in the background. I'm fairly certain, Mike, you go next. Where the heck are you? And then Sue, you can fully disclose where the hell you are.
I will.
Yep, I'm in Los Angeles. It is about 100 degrees out right now. So I know that it's been hot all across the country, but we are also taking part in that. It's usually a little cooler where I am, but yeah, just north of Los Angeles.
All right, Sue.
In full disclosure, if you saw my video yesterday, some of you may know where I am, but I am actually just leaving Sturgis, where I've been for the past 5 days. And we have been having a fantastic time riding through the hills of Sturgis, having a little bit of fun. I am having a Red Bull to bring me back to life today. But yeah, we've been having a good old time riding around in Sturgis. It's been pretty good. But so, as I said in the video, nothing more exciting than what we're doing here today.
Okay, so Sue is we've all I guess dressed appropriate. Sue, of course, has chaps on, but we don't get the full look for that. So I'll get back to my metaphor of South Florida. I live in South Florida, so I often use these ocean metaphors or water metaphors, and my best, by the way, to the poor people in North Florida who are probably flooded today. But I managed to miss that storm that hit us. So in any case, the article that I really wrote in May, and I just have one message for the industry. I wrote this article in May, and it was sort of a warning based on a lot of conversations I've had with clients and independent mortgage bankers across the country, where they've said, as long as interest rates come down at some point, I'm going to be okay. And I think the real indication was, of course, when we have refinance in our industry, it's better than when we don't. And now I'm going to show you, some stats that reinforce that point. I think the big point, though, in the warning I was making is I would not bet that we're going to have a refi boom like we certainly saw in 2020, 2021 during the COVID years. That's not going to happen. I don't really think, frankly, it's going to be as good as the first half of 2022 for the wide range of mortgage bankers, and that's really what I'm sort of laying out today. So I guess the point here is the rising tide lifts all boats, sure, but I'm not quite sure it's going to lift everybody equally. And in some cases, I'm not sure the typical independent mortgage banker is really going to be bailed out by another refi wave. Now, when I wrote this article, we were over 7. That was at May. I wrote it in May. It was released in June. And by the way, anybody who does not get our articles or insight articles every month, you ought to sign up for it. So you can stick it in the chat or find Sue and her video with her on a motorcycle and wearing chaps and let her know, or find Mike Seminari or myself on LinkedIn or by any method, and send us an email. We'll make sure you get it. But we put
And
these
hey, we're
articles-
gonna post links right in the chat here as well. But if
Sure.
you're listening in and you can't hit it live, if you're listening to the replay, just go to stratmorgroup.com and you'll find the articles right there.
Yeah. So yeah, or sign up and we'll push them to you. So really the point that I was making in the article is that I really don't believe that we're going to get a significant uptick from refinances. Now, when I wrote this in May, we were over 7, and here we are, 6 weeks later, and rates are dropping, and we're in the low 6s and probably going lower. And who knows, by the time somebody watches this on YouTube next week or the week after, it may have crept down even more. So I do think, hey, for those of you who wants to know what the surefire sign that interest rates are going to go down is me writing an article that warns people that maybe they're not going to go down as much as we think, or it's not going to help everybody equally. And so I think all these points are still valid. It is certainly, good that the market has begun. It appears to turn some, but I'm not sure it's going to lift everybody equally. And that
Hey,
was really
Garth,
the points I was
one,
going to make today.
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say I've already seen, just with the little bit of downtick in rates, we're already seeing kind of a wishful thinking that's starting to happen. I see lots of realtors emailing and texting everybody saying, so excited, rates are coming down now. You can start looking at buying houses again. And yesterday, my wife got an email solicitation that said rates are lower than they've ever been, which of course is not true, but it's this idea that, oh, okay, maybe things are going to get better now because Japan happened and we've got a recession maybe coming, and now everything is going to be fine. And what we're saying is, well, maybe rein that in just a little bit before we start celebrating and popping the champagne.
Yeah, and
I will share, there's a little bit of data that I wanted to throw into it as well, Garth, is when we do talk about how much volume is out there. I just saw some data from Ingenious the other day. And if you look at how many loans are out there above 7%, there's 1.8 million loans out there above 7% for a total of $572 billion in production. But when you go down to 6.5%, there's 5.4 million loans above 6.5% for 1.6 trillion in volume. So there is some volume out there depending on where rates go.
Yeah. And by the way, that 5.4, put that in a frame of reference. That's pretty encouraging. There were not 5 million loans done in the last year total. So the fact, if suddenly all those become in the money, which will take us, probably getting into the 5s. But if they suddenly became in the money, we certainly can see an uptick in interest rates. But let's talk about whether this is really going to apply equally to everybody. So there were really 4 reasons that I think the refi world has changed. I'll take them one at a time and invite Mike and Sue to hop in and make any comments. And the first one is the dreaded topic of trigger leads. And as the Mortgage Bankers Association has come out sort of against the practice of trigger leads, and many consumer groups have as well, what we mean in this example is the concept that pretty much anybody who is in our industry could purchase a new customer trigger, meaning they're able to sign up and say, if there is a trigger lead, a borrower has gone out and had a real estate related inquiry pulled on their credit report, normally an indication that they're seeking to either rent or purchase a home. If that event occurs, I'd like to know about it. And then I will pound that customer potentially in order to get, that refinance opportunity. And pound is really the operative word. And I don't want to make an editorial comment on whether I think triggers are good or bad, but they certainly are controversial. Dozens and dozens and dozens of phone calls somebody may have that blows up their phone. And in a lot of cases, these are refinance borrowers during these refinance booms. We are very close to having some legislation that may prevent this from being allowed unless you have an established relationship with the consumer. And I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a lobbyist, so I won't give you all the details of what, what political bill may pass or not pass based on establishing these restrictions. But these restrictions, when they come, will likely restrict the permissible purpose to those who have an established relationship, which means you're the existing mortgage servicer or you're a bank. Now, some of you in the audience and some of you watching this video say, I've never buy triggered leads, and that's okay. So this is less applicable to you. But what this means overall is that not everybody who enters the market is subsequently, by having their credit pulled, is not subsequently going to get pounded by dozens of other lenders who are all fighting for that rare opportunity when that borrower raises their hand and says, I want to refinance. It's really going to be the credit trigger element is really going to be restricted to those that are likely their depository institution, which they have a relationship, or the existing servicer, which they obviously have a relationship because they're making monthly payments. So I'm going to pause. That's one item. I don't think it's the biggest, but that is one big item that probably will be different in this refi wave, depending on how long this refi wave lasts, than existed in the 2020, 2021, and the first half of 2022.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
How good do we really think servicers are at doing this? Because
Well,
I'm just gonna say that I've got, I have 2 homes, I got 2 mortgages. And what I would say is that I don't think either of the servicers do exactly a bang up job, I'm not gonna name them, of being in touch with me ever about anything interesting, about what's going on. Mike's getting emails saying, hey, rates have never been, never been better. So I'm just gonna push back a little bit about how good do we think the servicers actually are at getting ahead of these deals?
Well, in the last, by the way, you queued up this slide pretty good. So the second thing I would say is in the last refinance boom, and even right now, rate and term refinances, half of them are being done through consumer direct operations. Most consumer direct operations are tied to either large servicers or large banks, or they're the large independent mortgage bankers who might do direct lending at scale. The bottom line is half of rate and term refinances are going through some call centers. It doesn't mean it's always the servicers, but it often means it is the servicer. Overall, the recapture rate in our industry on the refinance side is much higher than on the purchase side. And what the consumer behavior, if you look 2018 and 19 in this chart, roughly 40% of rate and term refinances 2018 and 19 were done through consumer direct, through centralized operations. And it's up over almost 60% at its peak. And it's really 60% now. These call centers are geared up and ready to go. If you are a servicer, especially if you bought the relationship through a correspondent, and which meant, the customer never chose to do the loan with you in the first place, you acquired that relationship, but then you subsequently don't do a great job in servicing, you certainly have not earned the right to do the next loan. But if you combine number one, which is you're not going to get 20 bids through a credit trigger program, and number two, the consumers have voted with their feet on easy rate and term refis, they're more likely or as likely to go through a centralized operation than to go through traditional retail. And you've done a decent enough job in the servicing world, you certainly, I think, have the right to try to get that loan back. And the other element on this is we in 2020, 2021, we went through a period where it was really hard for these call centers to keep up, and they still did fairly well above 40% of the loans. And the issue is capacity is certainly not going to be a problem right now. They got plenty of capacity. They're going to be able to answer the phone or respond to the click or have a web page that doesn't time out when they hit on it. I mean, just think back 2020, 2021, when the borrowers had to go find somebody who could help them get these unbelievably low rates. Right now, they're not going to have to go find someone. There's plenty of capacity in our industry.
Yeah,
So-
I would add, oh,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Mike. No, go ahead.
just want to add to that, Sue, to your point earlier, that the servicers maybe aren't doing a great job of reaching out, staying in touch, and interacting with you. The other half of that coin is, are they, was the original experience good enough to keep you sticky to that lender? So I think we're going to be talking more about that, but just
Yep.
that's a big element of whether they're going to look in-house or stay with the same person that's servicing.
I agree. And Mike, I know you're going to go deep on that, on the kinds of things people can do to prepare for that, and the kind of mistakes that people have made, that would lead them not to have that additional deal. But the other question I would ask both of you about this, though, is that as we get more of these, you think about Sales Boomerang is out there, Total Expert is customer intelligence. There's other programs that are out there that should be helping the customers that or the lenders that are investing in those tools be more proactive, though, about the deals that are in their own database that are in the money, though. And that combined with, to your point, Garth, more capacity, it feels like, I do think that, consumers are not always aware. I mean, I've literally heard consumers say like, oh, I didn't know I could go back to my loan officer for a refinance. I thought you just did purchases, I mean, it's like crazy making, but don't you think that we would see IMBs and banks and getting more ahead of their own database for those clients that are in the money?
Yeah, there's certainly, and I'm going to try to go through the entire webinar without talking about AI, because everything appears to be AI related. So I'm going to just stick to talking about big data. And big data, what I mean there is the aggregation of all sorts of signals. And we are working with a client right now, one of which the signal is that an individual is walking into open houses, as indicated by the geo tracking on their cell phone. And if somebody is walking into open houses, now it's possible they could be a stager for a real estate person, in which case they open open houses every day. They could be a part-time realtor sitting on an open house, but that they filter out through algorithms. But if somebody is looky-looing and constantly walking into open houses, that is a real good indication they may be looking to buy their next home. So it's not applicable to refinance. And I actually talk about this more in the second article that we just released that we'll talk about in a future episode. But there's certainly data that indicated that occurred. There's data out there in big data around the aggregation of life events, divorce, had children leaving the home. So there's all sorts of algorithms you can begin to build off this data that say they're more likely to want to pursue a loan. The rate and term refi is easy. Your old loan is 7. Your new loan can be 6. I could save you 1%. If your loan is $350,000, I can save you $3,500 a year. That's approximately $300 a month. Are you interested? So it's a real simple pitch on rate and term refi, which is the topic today. But when you get into the more complex signals, purchase, like Mike Seminari's wife, or cash out refinance to buy a new motorcycle like you, Sue. There's all sorts of data that helps you indicate that is a more likely event to happen. And the banks and servicers who are sitting on that data have an advantage if they know how to leverage it properly. Hey, one
being the key point.
You got it. Yes. Well, we are in the advisory business, so we help people say, hey, this is what you should do. We also help people to figure out how to do it effectively. So we're happy to have those conversations.
Right on.
One thing, by the way, this chart, and a lot of people look at it and go, I never heard that half of all refinance volume is done through Consumer Direct. That's not what I said. I said half of all refinance transactions are done. If you look at it on a dollar basis, it's less, because the average loan amount in retail is typically higher, much higher than the average loan amount in a Consumer Direct operation. So, which partially is because we tend to invest in retail branches around higher loan amount areas, et cetera. And because loan officers typically chase large loans. By the way, I started as a loan officer, which is why I went into that sales buzz thing where I just went straight to, I could save you 1% on your loan on a $350,000 or $3,500 a year. Are you interested? Or, now, or do you want me to call you back this afternoon? I can lock you in now. Dang it, this is awesome. I'm going to go for it. Sorry. So in any case, I think what this chart's saying though is consumers who refinance are just as likely to go to a call center if the call center can do a good job, which I think means if you're an independent mortgage banker who can't compete at that level with speed, service, et cetera, you know, you're not going to get probably half the refinances that come down the pike because consumers consistently since 2018
Right.
have apparently indicated they're just as likely to go to a call center.
Well, and Garth, you think about some of the secret shopping that we've done, right? And again, everybody, you know, they'll go unnamed, but we've seen that this is true, right? When you go through the secret shopping, you see what the beginning of that transaction actually looks like. The speed isn't there, the follow-up isn't there. It's shocking the number of times that whether it's online or a call that's made, that just nobody's following up on it. And so I think that's the advice here is that if you're listening and you're, you know, a call center, you're ready for this. If you're listening and you're an IMB and or a, you know, banking shop, getting ahead of this, being prepared, you know, getting ready and getting ahead of the game.
Well,
Okay,
yeah, go ahead. Nick. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just, what's really interesting to me is that 50-50 split of direct versus retail, and it overlay that with the data that says people are still choosing because of relationships, because of who they know, who they trust, their existing relationships, the lender they currently do business with. Almost all of that is, so it's very little solicitation or somebody going on to bank rate or something. And there's very few people, you know, definitely in the purchase business, but on the refi side of things, it's still the same story. They're still choosing because of past experiences or current people that they trust. So there's still a huge element of how are these people, you know, these call centers are actually doing a better job these days in creating that longevity of relationship and the trust and the referrals, and everything is spinning like that. So it just an interesting point. I think that we're still in the world of customer experience, even though you know, CD never had a reputation for being great at customer experience, but now with all the big data, with all the, you know, the emphasis on experience these days, it is really important.
Yeah, I will make one comment, and Sue, you mentioned this. If you run a mortgage company and you're in the call center business or you're in a retail business, that secret shopper element is unbelievably compelling. And the reason I say that, and if you're sitting here and say this does not ring true, I will challenge you. You should check and be sure. And here's the example I give you. 80% of the time when we do secret shopper, hundreds and hundreds of incidents where we make ourselves a consumer and we fill out inquiries online or call 800 numbers or get referrals directly to loan officers and call. 80% of the time, the conversation that we have, which we completely record, transcribe, and document, is not end up in the CRM. It just isn't in there. So I'm just saying, if you have a refinance opportunity and you talk to the consumer and the consumer says, yeah, I'm interested in this and I can save, you know, $70 a month, but gosh, I think rates are still coming down. If you don't enter that in the CRM to track it, it's just gone. You're not going to remember it 10 phone calls later. And 80% of the time, it is not in the CRM. So if you don't have a CRM that is effectively used, you're already behind the 8 ball. If you don't make your loan officers use it, you're behind the 8 ball. And if your loan officers don't document the conversations, the motivations, the reason the person can do it, and any good salesman, that $300 a month example I gave you really should be, what does the $300 mean to you, the consumer? $300 a month is, you know, at least, hell, it's a Tesla lease these days because those prices have come down so much. So, I mean, that's like real money for somebody that can be a real motivation to do it if you connect with them at that level.
Garth, the other thing I'd add is the kicker is I've seen the secret shopping results. You know, our colleague Brett McCracken does a fantastic job running this program. I've seen the results on purchase leads where people are not getting called back. And so forget about it, even just refis, you know, when they're coming, being prepared right now. your experience is perhaps not what you think it is. And it's really, really telling to get in there and check it. So
Yeah.
fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So I think so the first one is, hey, the credit trigger world may be different. And that we riffed on the fact that it starts to really affect a part of the big data model. And the second one is, the call centers have some element of ability to compete on a rate and term refi. By the way, they don't compete great on purchase. Only 15, remember the stat I just gave, there's only 15% of purchases go through call centers, 50% of refinances. So in other words, the rising tide is going to lift them, I think, as much as it would ever lift the retail mortgage banker. And then the third element is, if price matters, especially right now as you're really beginning to see the drop in interest rates. It's not a huge drop yet. It's the beginning. Every eighth matters. And look at what this rate shows. In a consumer direct, they're an eighth less in rate because they're about 60 basis points less in commission. And that typically translates into, lower overall cost per loan, which should translate into lower pricing. So the bottom line is, we as an industry, and if you look straight across, consumer direct is average 38 basis points for loan officer commission, or roughly $1,000 a loan. And it's been unbelievably consistent from 2018 through 2023. Meanwhile, the average retail mortgage banker, independent mortgage banker, is about 105 basis points over that same period of time. That 100 has stayed roughly the same, but has gone up as an overall cost per loan because the average loan amount's gone up. So right away, a consumer direct lender, if they're pitching somebody, they're at about $1,000 a loan, and a retail lender is about $3,000 a loan. They have a $2,000 advantage in commissions per loan, the moment they pick up the phone or respond to an inquiry. So a lot of lenders have not touched their comp plans, and their comp plans are geared for purchase. And they're geared for purchase because of self-source opportunities. And that's totally makes sense. And I've written a previous article. If anybody want that, you can put your comment in the chat or send us an email about commissions overall. But the point I'm sort of getting at here is just, what's different this time is there's a real big delta in cost per loan, because there's a real big delta in the commission level. And what can you as an independent mortgage banker do? There's no reason you can't, you don't pay differently. There's no reason you shouldn't pay differently for purchase and refi. A refi is easy and a purchase is hard. And most compensation plans we see for independent mortgage bankers don't really rationalize it. So just, if you're going to do it, you're going to try to ride the refi thing, why not pay them less? And granted, you got to be able to keep your people. So, you got to be careful about this. And we do comp plan design that sort of addresses this. But, if you just keep paying at 100 basis points, you're going to be a little off in your rate pitch over and over again, especially in this early stages when, the delta is not that big. Right now we're fighting, refis are 0.75% drop. And even if they hit, Sue, we get the 5 million that Ingenious says, we can hit when you get under 6.5. That means we got to get well into the fives for those to be firmly in the money.
The only thing I'd add to that, Garth, is that, also from our buddies at Ingenious, there was some data that they had talking about how consumer debt has increased really significantly over the last few years. Probably no shock to anybody listening. So I think there may be more people that are coming in, needing help with a cash out refi to try to, there's plenty of equity built up in these properties, and there's a lot of debt out there at really high interest rates, like really high interest rates now. So I don't know.
And that is a classic T cell, right? So as a loan officer, which is, where are you now and where can I take you? And right, if I can drop your monthly payment on a no cash out, that gets you part of the way. But boy, if you've got equity because your property is surged, and maybe I can also remove your MI, but give you a little bit of cash out, even if it's in the form of rolling in 2 months payments, you suddenly can pay off a high interest rate credit card, and you're in the money big time. And that's really, the element of sales. And by the way, if you run a mortgage company and don't secret shop your people, you may say, oh, of course my loan officers do that. But if they don't have the muscle memory and you're not checking, inspecting what you expect, they may get these opportunities that maybe your marketing dollar is supporting or your CRM is supposed to help that you paid for. And, they squander it. And it's just a darn shame because it's an opportunity to, meaningfully change someone's life and, give them a chance to save, and they don't take notes. They don't put it in the CRM. They don't follow up. In a lot of cases, boy, that's a missed opportunity.
Right on. Keep rolling, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. So I guess the other piece here that and this will sort of serve up Mr. Seminari, is the concept that have we really earned the right to get these refinances back? And I will certainly give you the statistic that the retention rate in our industry, meaning the retention rate for lenders who are servicers, is sub 20% on average. And, so customers are telling us over and over again, I ain't going back. Even good retail, mortgage bankers who originate their own loan and then go and retain their own servicing and don't sell it, they're still often sub 20s. And, so 4 out of 5 people are picking a new loan from not the same person they got the last loan from. I mean, it's just, doesn't matter what statistic you want. We could throw slide after slide after slide with you that historically retention is not high. So why is that, Mike?
And it may get worse even with so much selling off of MSRs. You don't even have that shot at continuing the relationship with that person. And so, I mean, what we see is when a loan closes, you have this brief period of euphoria. You got your refi check, you got your lower rate, lower payment, you got your new keys to your new house. You're pretty happy about that loan closing. And so you generally give fairly high marks, and then take 6 months, take 12 months down the road, or even into that servicing relationship, several years, that shine's all gone. You forget about that relationship. You are not thrilled about someone just collecting your money. So we do a lot of surveying on the servicing side as well as sub-servicing side as well as on the origination side. But what we see on the servicing side is that there is no shine left after a few months, and unless that team really wowed you or surprised you or did some good things, you're just not gonna. It's not gonna be memorable, and it wasn't a positive enough experience to make a lasting difference. So I'm going to talk about 2 things, which one is how do you make the experience positive, and 2 is how do you make it memorable. So when we talk about a positive experience, most LOs, their self-perception of that process is I did a great job. My customers love me. They gave me a great rating. They gave me a testimonial. They're going to refer me business here, right? They make that link that is a natural outcome. They will refer me business because they liked me and they trusted me, and that will lead to new business. Fast forward for them a year down the road, they've not gotten any referrals from that person, and they wonder why. And so I consistently in conversation with LOs, and their response typically is, well, the market. But I also know LOs who are crushing it, who are getting lots of referral and repeat business. The difference between them tends to be how close of an eye, how much focus they place on the actual process itself. So we're always telling people the process is more important than that relationship you have with the customer, the LO relationship. The process, you can have a great LO relationship. In fact, most people do. The average LO star rating is 4.75 out of 5 stars, which, if you do the math, is 95 out of 100. It's really high, right? So if you're 94 out of 100, 9.4 out of 10, whatever you want to call it, you're actually below average. You're below the 50 yard line. So we have lots of customers who really love their LOs, but at the same time, we have certain things in the process that if they go wrong, they completely destroy, forfeit that chance to get a referral. And so you might have someone who forgets to call to go over final numbers at the very end. And that takes you from an 85 NPS, Net Promoter Score, down to -10. That's a 95-point drop just because you didn't call and go over the final figures with them. Or they had to call for their own updates. There's a more than 100-point drop when they have to call for their own updates versus you proactively providing them updates. Or something as simple as you had asked them, they were asked multiple times for the same document. That's a 50-point drop, right? When that happens. And that happens often, 1 in 5, 1 in 4 loans with most companies. So you're talking about major swings in that likelihood to recommend, because one little thing, quote unquote little thing, it's a big thing. One thing goes wrong in the process, and all of a sudden that borrower is no longer a raving fan. And so if you're not monitoring those things, see, most of the companies we talk to will monitor high level KPIs, your overall satisfaction, your NPS overall, and then pat themselves on the back because they have pretty high scores. But if you're not looking at the drivers, what is driving that NPS score, that likelihood to recommend? If you're missing on some of those things, then you miss the whole boat, because those people are no longer referring people. So a positive experience, more than anything else, that's communication, that's being proactive, that's setting the right expectations, doing the right things within the process that will create that raving fan. Why? Because it's unexpected. So
yeah, and that's what's sort of earning you right on that next loan. That's why the refi customer would come back to you for sure, not just because the loan officer did a good enough job or a good job or answered the phone when they called and connected with them, but that the overall process, which lasted 45 to 60 days, was so positive that there's no reason that they would seek out an alternative for their next loan, because the process was, near perfect, right? Overall.
Absolutely.
No, I got to share a interesting comment from Chris. I know we're getting close on our time here. We got about 8 minutes. But Chris weighed in with an interesting point in the chat here, talking about that they purchased 2 homes, used the same local bank for both. Servicing was great, fantastic, but they said the origination process absolutely sucks. And, terrible technology, laborious process. Said doubt we'll refi them, but if we do, we go elsewhere. Think about that, all about that process. So Mike, you're spot on.
Yeah, and we often talk to LOs about, and I'm often talking to leadership at lenders, and we say, well, what do you think of your customer experience? And their typical answer is, well, we think we do a pretty good job. Our loan officers are well liked, they're trusted by our customers, and they kind of hang their hat on that, put all their eggs in that, or all their confidence in those 2 items. And what I tend to remind them is that, well, that's kind of table stakes, that for an LO to be liked is not really special. That's kind of part of the job description, that you're liked as an LO. 95% or more are super highly liked, that 95 average. And to be trusted, you're not going to send your social security number and financials to somebody who you don't trust, right? So it's like really basic. And what that ends up getting you, if you're liked, you will get a testimonial. Will that testimonial do anything for you sitting on a website somewhere where nobody's going to search and read it? Probably not. Will it get you, if you're trusted, will it get you somebody coming back, if they need to do a quick refinance or something? You may get a repeat customer, but you're not going to get unprompted advocacy from those people. That means if you ask me for a loan officer, sure, I'll tell you my loan officer's name because I like them. But I'm not going unprompted out and saying, I can't believe what a great experience I had. If you ever needed to do a loan, you have to use this person. Right? That's a big, big difference in revenue generation. And so what we try to get to, if we have another slide, I think we can show that next slide, is we need to get into the upper levels of not just being liked and trusted, which will get somebody, if you ask them for a recommendation, they'll give it to you, but up into the levels of the unexpected, where it's unprompted, where I can't help it. I'm just going to talk about this with everybody I talk to. In those two areas, we kind of just talked about one, and that's a smooth process. Often overlooked how important that is, but it's important because it's unexpected. People go into the loan process with much fear and anxiety, expecting bumps in the road, expecting, like going in for a root canal. You're not expecting a, a pain-free, comfortable, wonderful experience when that happens. If you get one, you probably will tell everybody I couldn't believe it. It didn't even hurt. So you have that smooth process that is delightful. It's unexpected, so it's delightful, but you also have the wow factor. And you may, this is tough to teach. Some people are just wired to give that wow experience, but there's little things you can do to go above and beyond. And you have to be thinking about it, right? So you probably have some really top performers who are good at giving a great experience, great communication, but maybe challenge them. What could you do that's above and beyond? That phrase above and beyond, I love it because I read lots of testimonials with the product and services we have. And that phrase stands out to me all the time because it's often connected. It follows with, they were so above and beyond. They did so much that I didn't expect. And then it says, and I've already recommended them. I've already told my brother. I've already told my parents about them. And so it's often that word of mouth. You can see it happening right in the testimonial that's already happening. But it's above and beyond or smooth process. Those two things come up in the testimonials as being delightful because they're unexpected.
Yeah. One thing I did want to point out, by the way, is when we look at this slide, it's pretty in depth, and we measure this on behalf of clients. And you look through and say, if none of these bad things happen, and you end up with NPS scores that are 87, 86.
No, it's like 90, 96.
You're like, you have a staggering NPS score. You have raving fans, and it doesn't happen the majority of the time, but it happens. The lenders who measure it and continue to reinforce it get this, and they're the ones that get the return refis for sure, or they sure get a crack at the return refi because the process did not leave any gaps that makes the consumer say, yeah, I'll look elsewhere. So
yeah, there's companies, Garth, that we work with that have now for a number of years managed to those 7 things. And I kid you not, half of their loan officers, or more than half of the loan officers, every single month we see 0 mistakes, 0 miscues, because they're looking at those things. And they're the ones that are getting a lot of repeat and referral business.
Yeah, and some of the highest.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah, and some of the highest ones in the industry. So yes. I think we're going to probably do the summary here and real quick. Number one, how do you compete for every loan, or how do you take advantage of these refinance? Make sure you're in the right channel. So maybe you don't have to be in consumer direct, by the way, but you better incorporate some of the elements of consumer direct, which include the ability to increase your lead generation, dig deep into data, big data, in order to generate these opportunities when they're in the money, or when they have cash out, or when they have some life event that makes them want to consider it. This process for refinance needs to be super fast because, they have options and they can bail. And if you hit any of those 7 bumps that Mike talked about, you're likely going to have that person just bail because, they're not staring at a fixed sales or closing date. And especially, hey, if we're in a down rate market and you lock somebody in at 6%, yay, rates are 6, and then they drop to 5 3/4. Guess what? Oops. So the faster you can close, the faster you have that opportunity to, not have to get into a rate negotiation on a down rate environment. So, that's another reason, super streamlined process. The other is, though, crank these refis out because, there's other customers that are seeking them as well. And finally, the element of that is, if you build a really good process, you focus on those 7 things, you try to create that near perfect experience of the 96 NPS that Mike mentioned, you're not just giving yourself a shot at this one, you're going to give you a shot at the next one. You're building a base of business, not just a single transaction. Really consider the compensation plans. And every time I talk about compensation plans, I always worry people are going to say, oh, you're just some damn consultant. And they always say, cut the expense. I started in this business as a loan officer, so at least I have some, understanding of what I say, but refinance is just easier and is not deserving of the same compensation as a purchase. Anybody wants to flame me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to take it. And by the way, I have an article about purchase, which I say, almost a contrary sort of view. So
Right on.
the
Yeah, hey,
bottom line is yeah, go ahead, Sue.
Encourage everybody to go out to stratmorgroup.com. All of the articles that we talked about are right there. And to Garth's point earlier, you can sign up where we'll just send you out our latest article every single month. And we'd love to talk to you about any things we chatted about today. I mean, Mike Seminari is such a pro with that MCX program, and does a great job being very diagnostic for the lenders that are involved in that and saying exactly where the issue is. We talked about secret shopping. And gosh, Garth, we're going to have a bunch of us hitting the road pretty soon, right? We'll be out at, I'm going to go to Digital Mortgage Bankers Association. Where else are we going?
I've got 3 or 4 different vendors. Ones I'm speaking at. I've got the MBA.
We're going to be out there.
All the MBA events. We have a consumer
All
direct
the
workshop
things.
in November that
Right
people are
on.
invited to attend. So if anybody's
Yeah.
interested in that.
Yeah,
So,
anybody wants more information, just definitely connect with us on LinkedIn, any of the 3 of us, hit us up on stratmorgroup.com. And most importantly, hopefully you'll join us for the advisory angle every single first Tuesday of the month, powered by that Crispin commentary. But we're so glad that you joined us today. And again, feel free to reach out to any of us if we can ever help.
and especially Sue, who hosted from Sturgis, but I'm fairly certain next month we'll be, back in a normal location.
God knows where it's going to be. I don't know. I'm in a truck stop at the moment, but the Wi-Fi held. So rock and roll,
Yeah.
baby.
All right.
All right. Signing off. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.